Okay, great. Here we go. Another wonderful Bharcs season special with Anushree today. Hi, Anushree.
Hey, Andy.
Hi, Eva.
Hi.
So, Suzanne won't be here today because of some technical things going on, I think, over there where she's at. But Sarabi will be here in a bit. So we'll be able to invite Sarabi in a bit. Just a big thank you again to everybody in the Bharcs family for coming and doing these with us. Say hi in the room, by the way. I can see you all coming in there. So now, hi. Oh, hi. Yeah, great to see you. And today we've got Anushree, who's going to be guiding us through emotional safety with a focus on Snow's story. And we've got a presentation again. And I really value the effort that goes into these presentations. And so I'm really looking forward to that. So hi Zoe, hi Gwen, good to see you all. Just to point out this, I got sent through here, this YouTube logo thing. I got sent through from YouTube because of Dog Centre Care YouTube channel and just being recognized as a rising creator. But I don't really create much. I just turn up. It's because of the wonderful work and the gift of time and passion and knowledge that people like yourselves give us, and all the wonderful people who've contributed to the platform. You know, we're getting on for 100 conversations in there, which is amazing. And so that kind of goes out to everybody. And also to introduce Pedro, who's my Jean-Paul Gaultier Chihuahua, who I found at a store recently. I had to rescue him because he looked very cute. Good. So hi from Detroit, hi from Portugal. Yes, please do say where you are around the world. It's always good to see such a big international crowd. So Anushree, over to you.
Thanks so much. Thanks, Andy. Eva, thank you so much for being here. So I'm going to talk about Snow's journey today. He's a dog I adopted. Oh, hey, we can say hi to Sauj.
Yes, I got it the wrong way around. So Suzanne is here.
Sauj is there.
Yes, it was the way. Great. So here comes Suzanne. Hi, Suzanne.
Okay, cool.
Great. Yes, it's Sarabi who's got the
Yeah.
electricity problems.
Yeah.
Yes, good.
Awesome. Okay, great. Everyone's here. So today we're going to be talking about Snow. He's a dog I adopted about 4 years ago now. So just to give you a little bit of context, I used to work at a trauma center for about five years, and then I continued to volunteer at shelters as I had a full-time. I moved into a full-time corporate job, and I continued to do that. So it's been a while. And so even when Snow and my path crossed, I already had what I thought was quite a bit of knowledge and experience, having worked with dogs who have come from a place of trauma, who've been having a hard time. So that's just a bit of context about my sort of interactions with dogs who have had a troubled past. So it wasn't entirely new to me, but you'll see just how new it actually was as we sort of proceed with the story. But Andy, if there's nothing, should I just jump right into the presentation? Should we get started?
Yes, please do. And one thing I forgot to mention, make sure you stick around right to the very end because I've got to announce a very generous discount code for Bharcs 101 Essentials, which we'll give at the end. So look out for that because it's a 45% discount to do the amazing 101 Essentials course. So make sure you hang around for that. But yeah, let's dive right in.
Awesome. Thank you. That's quite exciting also. Okay. I hope I got this. All right. I'm hoping you can see my screen. Yes. Okay, cool. Awesome. So the dog that's in the middle is Snow, and the other dog, is very, very all of our dogs are very important to this journey, but especially Luna to Snow. So Luna, the white and black Indie, she's now about 6 years old, but we adopted her when she was about 6 months, and she was paralyzed from the neck below. Someone had hit her on the spine, so she's had a hard past, but I think it's important to call that out because you'll see how that sort of puts her in such a unique position to actually be there for Snow. But yeah. Okay, so how did Snow end up coming home? So we used to adopt dogs who were not adoptable, so to speak. So either really old dogs, really sick dogs, or dogs who are having a hard time with behavioral issues. But having said that, when we went to see Snow, I had no intention of bringing him home because I already had 7 other dogs at the time. But the video, and some of this is hard to watch, so please, if at least this video, the first video that I'm showing you, I know is a bit hard to watch, so please let me know if it's okay to do that. But I'm going to mute it. This was the first. This was how I saw Snow when we walked into the space that he was being kept in. I'm gonna just mute it, but that's what it was like. He hadn't peed, pooped, eaten, had water. He was like this for about 3 days. And so initially the vet said, when the first day that he went in, that, they do a whole bunch of tests, check if he was okay, because I wanted to get him out of there and, move him into a foster home potentially. But when we went back 3 days later, wanted to check on him, this is how we found him. They said he refused to eat. The gate actually was locked. They said that he had attacked every attender and he sort of really badly attacked one of the vets. And so they couldn't really handle him. They tried with, and sometimes here they use really harsh equipment to hold dogs. So they tried everything and they couldn't. So they hadn't done anything. And he hadn't eaten, even had water in 3 days. So that was how we found him. And of course, in that moment, I thought, okay, I have to take him home because I don't think, like, this wasn't really looking like this was going to, make any difference to him. It's just going to worsen, right? So we brought him home, and that was really tough because I think in my head, with the experience that I thought I had, what I had always seen was that if you could give them a little bit of space, some sense of stability, security, make sure that their nutritional needs are met. If they're unwell, sort of addressing that, sort of being there for them and supporting them, in my head I thought would be okay, good enough for him to start wanting to live. I mean, I feel like I wasn't even seeing that, and we went weeks and months, and because he was so unwell, he had pancreatitis, he had to be admitted in a hospital. So even putting a harness me lifting a harness resulted in him like running to the corner of the room and shivering, and just like similar to what you saw here, right? And this was him all the time. He didn't want to get up to eat, he didn't want to pee and poop. So we were really struggling. But at the same time, there were these moments where I think a couple of weeks into him coming home, we introduced him to Luna. So please forgive some of you'll see that I'm making obvious mistakes. This was before I had found Bharcs and before we changed the way that we were doing a lot of things. So just be patient with me as we go through this. But this is him meeting our other rescued indie, Luna, who becomes very critical to his story as well. But this was them. So you can see that there is some interest, but I think just there's no space in the way that we were doing this. We were so involved. So I can see all of those, but it's amazing how these 2 dogs have forgiven us with all of the interference we've had, right? Like coming into his face, things like that. But having said that, these 2 quickly picked up, started to bond. And I do definitely want to call out some of the things that started to become really obvious. Now, while he was still not eating, he would wake up every morning shivering. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to help him. With Snow, some of the key things that we did like face real challenges with were that he was very, very, very reactive, and the triggers seemed to be endless. It could be someone simply walking past the door, to a dog entering the door, to someone looking in his direction, to sounds, to other dogs. And this was becoming really challenging because it was ending up in bites, right? So every time my partner got up, Snow would attack. Every time my partner would walk, Snow would attack. Every time my partner would enter a room or anyone, Snow would attack, right? And so, and when I say like this would happen like 30 times a day, like 30 times a day of Snow just going at someone or another dog, right? So I think the aspect of safety became a big concern in all of this. And there were some other pieces that I do want to call out because, you know, when we see a dog who is lashing out, so to speak, right? Because we're so stunted with how I would describe this. But when I see a dog who is just in a place where they're, you know, feeling the need to attack or be aggressive in that sense, or like create distance, whatever it is, you don't picture this dog. You don't picture a shy dog. You don't a cowering dog. You know, you don't picture that. But it really does come from the same space of fear, right? If you just because a dog is behaving in a certain way, it doesn't mean the root cause needs to be any different. It's just the expression that they choose to end up using, right? So while we could see that, we can acknowledge that piece. Some of the other things that started to come up is really just how little we really know of a dog's history and their past. And this is a little bit of a hard video to watch as well, so just trigger warning there. But this happened well into Snow and I sort of bonding. So it took a couple of months, and I say months, but I think a year into adopting Snow, and I had still got attacked once when he came, and this was a very like a very heartbreaking story for me even today. But I was sitting on a couch and I thought, you know, we had made all this progress, and he came up to me and he curled up next to me, and I was so like, I don't know, I was so overwhelmed with emotion, and I just turned and I smiled and he attacked my face, right? So while that's happening on one side, and this is how layered it often is, we're also having these moments which I'm going to show you now. And I also want to call out that this was the first one of the first few times that he had sort of asked for connection in this way, like in such a vulnerable sort of position. And that was the first time I saw these cut marks on his chest, right? So it was also starting to put these pieces together of what exactly this, not that I would ever know, but how much this dog may have been through that I just have no idea, right? But it's just, it's, you can see the marks there, but it's the sweetness with which he, and I, you know, you can see me pause because I had not seen that in such a way before, and I didn't know how to react in that moment. And to see him still want and ask, I think that was really something. So I think for me, what's interesting in this whole thing is to have both of these exist simultaneously, where I'm seeing these moments of connection, and I'm building this trust, but at the same time, this dog is still attacking me, right? So for me, it's like, what's happening? Like, what are you like? What are you doing? Like, I remember in that moment feeling so betrayed. Like I just froze and I started sobbing, and I was like, oh my God, I've done so much for this dog, right? And then he still bites me. And I remember in that moment finally thinking, okay, I can't do this on my own. Like, I don't think, and I think I'm actually making this worse for this dog, because every time he's giving me a little bit, I seem to be fumbling, and then he's taking a couple of steps back. So, oh, sorry, something else is playing. Okay, let me just, yeah. So when we look at, what were some of the key things when we were struggling with Snow, at least some of the things, it was this having to live with both of these together and acknowledge that while I am having these great moments, I'm also like, he's still attacking me. So I'm fumbling up somewhere. I'm doing something really wrong. And I remember clearly, I've never ever gone the training route. It's never ever sat well with me. Uh, I remember one of our first dogs, we tried to get her to sit, and she was like, no, and I just thought, oh, I just thought it's silly. Like in my head, I was like, why do I need my dog to sit? In my head, that was it. But so I didn't even go down the route. And I think I'm so grateful that I knew what I didn't want to do. I think it took me a while to figure out, okay, there is another option out there. And I know a lot of us say this after we find Bharcs, finally. But I remember when I had started figuring out, okay, or accepting that, hey, I don't know how to do this, right? I may have had this experience, and I may have worked with so many dogs, and I may have rehomed this many dogs, and it doesn't matter because I'm not able to do it for this one dog, and he is an individual, and I need to look at it like that. But then before Sindoor and I connected, I reached out to someone else who had sort of said, oh yeah, we do, it's very, very similar to this way. And I thought, okay, that's a way that I can align with, can we talk about it? But then when we actually got into it, the things that were being told to me were very different. So Snow was, as we started to have this relationship, Snow, I could not leave the house, right? Snow was with me all the time. If I went to the bathroom, he was outside the bathroom. If I was working, he was sitting there. And he was constantly looking at me. And at that time, I remember my partner saying, you're constantly allowing him to be with you all the time. And I think that's making it worse. And this person that I went to actually said the same thing. And she said, he's constantly asking asking for attention. And, every time you keep looking at him, you are sort of reconfirming, or you're sort of training an emotion, so to speak. Like that's the underlying of what was being said. And so to not do that, when he's asking for attention, let him know that he has to figure it out on his own. And that, this is where you draw the line. So, some of the suggestions were, don't make eye contact, don't reciprocate, don't have him with you all the time, start like creating barriers. And it went down south so fast from there. And I was like, almost in panic mode, like this is really escalated out of hand. And I remember also thinking in that moment, oh my God, so sad. In my head, I was like, that's so sad. Imagine if someone is, because he's looking at you with the eyes like, I don't know, help me, reassure me. I don't know. Now I know what the words are, but at the time I didn't know. And I was like, how can you do that? Like, if someone wants to be with you so badly, how can you say no? So I got that. But there's also this pressure that you are constantly faced with, and the things that you're constantly being told that you should do, and you actually being there for them or giving them that connection is what's causing the problem, right? That's a narrative that's spun so easily and quickly. Right? So it's easy to also sort of start thinking about it. But thankfully, he was just like, this is absolutely not working for me. What you were doing was somewhat working for me, but also not. But this is just definitely no, right? And it went down south fast. So then I remember reaching out to Sindoor saying, Sindoor, I can't do this anymore. Like I'm stuck, like help me. And she was like, you need to do CE 101, right? The Canine Essentials 101. And I was like, okay, fine, I'm gonna do it. And I remember doing so it was a couple of weekends. I remember doing Saturday, and I was like, I can't even wait to finish 101, just sign me up, because I knew that this was sort of reconfirming a lot of things that came instinctively, but I had no words to put to it. And it was almost like finally finding someone who wanted to look at a dog as an individual, who wanted to be there, be supportive, be kind, and it's not a narrative that was being talked about at the time, and it was almost being made fun of, right? And so finally, when I found this, I was like, oh my God, okay, cool. So that's how we started. And then, of course, there were a lot of things that came through. Right. So some of the key things was, of course, we talked about everything being a trigger, and I'll circle back to this in a bit. I just want to, I'll finish this slide in terms of what we were facing, and then I'm just going to pause in case there's anything that anyone wants to add. But some of the other things, as soon as we adopted Snow, he had severe bouts of pancreatitis. We were battling tick fever. We were in and out hospitals for days on end. I remember once my partner and I had a heated argument, and in that moment, I just turned to Snow and I said, and that was the only time I even raised my voice at him, and I said, oh my God, Snow, can you please just get off the bed, right? That's all I said. It was just the way that I said, and he got off the bed immediately. He got off the bed. He walked to the hall, and that was the first night and only night that he has slept away from me in the end, if I've been at home, right? The only time. He didn't eat the next day, and the day after that, we had taken him to a vet. So we had a really hard time with so many aspects of these things being intertwined, right, with his emotions. And I think that's the part that is become so critical. His emotions, his physical health, the environment, all of that started to, because everything had an impact, you know. So we were battling with that, and every morning I talked about him waking up. I didn't know what to do. He wasn't eating, and there was so much more. But and I'm going to pause for a bit before we get into the next section and maybe stop sharing in case anyone wants to, or actually I can continue keeping this slide on, but if anyone wants to come on screen and if you guys have anything to add here, Eva, Saujanya, I know Sauj, you have been there and I have like talked about this to no end with both of you actually. So if there's something you want to add, please, now's a good time.
Snow's story is like every time, like I was there when this was evolving, right? When I joined Bharcs. But every time I hear you talking about him, like the first video, I remember you sharing that in the WhatsApp group. It breaks you, like this poor dog, like, oh, and I was getting really emotional while you were talking, but I'm speechless. Like this story really touches my heart. So thank you for being so open to sharing it with other people, because I think it's very valuable. So thank you.
Thank you, Eva. Sauj, anything you want to add?
I mean, as Eva said, we have heard the story and we have seen the story evolve right in front of us, but it's always emotional, always. I think this is a story that talks about the extent of how Bharcs works, right? Like how one is Snow's extreme emotions, right? Which is, you know, he was anxious and scared and you could see it, and then he was reactive and you could see it, right? Like there was such obviousness to his, you know, reactions that he was having. And I love the way the story was. Obviously you will share all of it, but one thing that kind of breaks my heart, and this is coming up for me because I also had a client very recently who had a very similar situation where you're asked to ignore your dog, right? Or you're asked to not give attention to your dog, or not, you know, allow them to seek connection, so to say, or not encourage them seeking connection. And that is so heartbreaking. I mean, where are we leading towards as a culture where connection is frowned upon, as, you know, it's just so heartbreaking. And I can see how it is not innate for us, right? It's not natural for us. How you were saying that this was not instinctively something that you would want to do. It was not something that you were comfortable, but you thought maybe logically it's making sense because somebody is saying that, you know, you seem to be reinforcing. And I think you use the right words, right? Like they spoke about like reinforcing emotions. And can we even ever do that, right? Like, can you reinforce emotions, right? So I think that is coming up for me because I also had a client who spoke about how same thing, right? It was so unnatural. It would break her heart not acknowledging her dog. And I think that's something that, you know, you also spoke about. So that kind of stood out for me. But I love his story. I love Snow's story. And it's so emotional. As Eva said, we have seen this so many times. We have heard this so many times. We've seen the videos. And I don't think it ever does not make us emotional.
Yeah, I know what you mean. It's hard actually reliving some of these things because you don't think of it day to day, right? It's like moments like this when you're like, actually think about, oh my God, like, have we done all of this in just a few years? Like, because it feels like we've like, you know, sorry. Anyway, I'll thank you, Sauj. If no one else had anything, Andy, if there are no more questions, then maybe I can continue.
I just wanted to say, Tricia in the comments says that you speak for the emotional roller coaster that many people go through while on their journeys with their dogs. So this will really resonate. And so, yeah, thank you.
That's awesome. Thank you. Okay, cool. So yeah, so while these were some of the things that were obvious to us, as I started to study at Bharcs, as Sindoor and I started to work closely, you know, she started to help me very closely with Snow because I was obviously really struggling. And I think at this point we were about a year and a half almost into adopting Snow, right? And there was still the bites, there was still the reactivity. Sure, I think the only difference was that to some extent, I had started to understand what those patterns were or what those signs looked like, but I was no better in terms of understanding what I could do or how I could help. So, that's the place I was in. And I remember Sindhu one day, and I remember this so vividly because we were working and we were doing some, street talk. We were looking at some other videos, and she all of a sudden, and I was just explaining to her, saying, Sindhu, I can't do this anymore. It's been like a year and a half, 2 years, and he's just attacking like how, and then she all of a sudden, and we talked about everything. Okay, there are a couple of key principles that, we definitely, we suggested Bharcs, and I think both Sauj and Surabhi in their previous conversations have talked about the cup being full and, some of the basic things. So she said, hey, go back to basics. Have you been, and we talked about it, and she said, hey, I was just thinking about all, and she said, tell me all the behavior, tell me what you're seeing. And I'm like, okay, she's like, just say the words, and I was telling, he's very moody, he's, unpredictable. Sometimes it just feels like he's just irritable, and I can't figure what has changed. And she said, have you considered doing a thyroid test, And so again, we're unlocking this other piece. So, okay, we start exploring that. And then turns out that, hey, his thyroid is like completely off the charts, and a lot of the behaviors that we're seeing there. So, that started. And then, so we start really layering this whole thing. But I think one of the most important things for me and what Bharcs means is really, yeah. And I think this is some of the smaller pieces that I definitely show about what we started doing, but, oh, I did something, sorry. Yeah, but I think it started to put things into perspective in terms of my expectations. I think I was expecting this dog to be a certain way at a certain time because of certain number of things. And I think Bharcs pushes that. And I think I remember in multiple, and I say this a lot in my head mostly, but Bharcs, what it really allows you to do is it allows you to go as deep as you allow yourself to go. And that's the beauty of Bharcs. It is never ending. It's up to you, right? You unlock more layers. And I started to see that because as I got into Bharcs, I had to, well, we talked about triggers a lot, right? And I had to start to acknowledge or start to ask the question of why behaviors were triggering to me. I was just calling them triggers. I was saying, he's triggered with this and he's triggered with that. And I'm like, but wait, what's the trigger, right? And then I break it down and I'm like, actually, I'm triggered by his reaction. That's the real trigger, right? The trigger in that is not that, hey, it's the trigger for me, which I had to sort of really pause, and was a hard pill to swallow, let's be honest, was that I was being triggered because this dog was not doing as I say, right? And I'm putting it really bluntly, but in my head, I was like, oh, I'm going to use the Bharcs way and I'm going to give you choice and I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. But then why is this behavior still like this, right? So again, I had to unlock another level of Bharcs where I was like, wait a minute, why does this behavior trigger me? And I think it really, for me, it came down to the fact that when I grew up, there was no, the way that I was raised, there was no option of, I mean, if you were told something, you had to do it, otherwise you would trigger someone, right? So for me, and that was really hard because I'm expecting this of someone just solely based on a subconscious sort of conditioning that I've had, which is if this dog is not listening to me, then it means that he is being defiant and he's being this and he's being that and he's being so many other things, except that, hey, maybe he's just having a hard time. And I think it was hard for me to extend this to someone when it was not extended to me. Sorry. Yeah, I think that was very tough. And so, but when I got to the place where I could say, okay, fine, and I think Bharcs pushes you to do that, because I remember in one of the modules, it was getting too hard because for me, it really hits you in your triggers, right? And for me, communication was a big trigger. And I remember Sindhu giving me feedback and me literally texting her saying, I can't do this anymore. I'm done. This is too much. I don't see why I need to be doing this. I don't know why I need to look at my, it was like, there was so much of an ego sort of thing. And I remember Sindoor, like she really, like she took a moment, she wrote back and said, hey, I completely get it. Like this course is meant to be challenging, because at the end of the day, this course is focused on you. If you are in a tough space, that's fine. If you need a break and you need to come back to it, that's okay. I'm not going to force you and, or encourage you, or like sort of blindside you into thinking that oh no, you should do this course, and I'm not going to tell you any of that. It is a hard course. If you want to get through it, take your time and come back, right? And I was like, yeah, okay. And I took my time, and the reason that it bothered me so much is because they were genuine triggers for me, right? So it was really unpacking a lot of those things. And the thing with Snow, when I was able to actually say, hey, actually the way I was raised was not optimal. I wish, instead of, if I was crying, someone came and told me, asked me, hey, why are you crying? Not stop crying, or I'm going to do this or I'm going to do that. So, for me, the minute I was saying, kid, this is actually not okay. It's okay to be there for someone. And I think Bharcs tells you that. And Bharcs, at least for me, it showed me what that can enable, right? So before we get into the details of it, I just want to show you some of the key, some of the smaller things that we ended up doing as we started Bharcs. And you have to also keep in mind that Snow was a very, the first couple of months was every time we took the harness, like I mentioned, it was to a vet. So it was, while there were a lot of other things that I could, like other tools and pieces of information that Bharcs sort of equips you with, it's also, I think Saujanya pointed this out to someone else the other day, saying, hey, read the dog, right? Like take feedback from the dog. Is it working for your dog and is it not? And so walks were out of the way entirely for us, because just the mere sight of even another dog going on a walk would like, he'd start breathing really hard, and he'd like start shivering, he'd cower, right? Things like that. So we started doing things around the house that he kind of liked. And some of these were things like this. So for me, it was just really sweet to see that he was opening up and he's able to be himself, right? Because he's so guarded. He's such a guarded, I know Saujanya has met him, and he's such a guarded dog. He's constantly, at least he used to be on edge, and like, is someone going to do something? And I remember capturing the first moment when he actually threw a toy in the air and he looked at me like, oh my God, like, am I in trouble? Are you going to do, like, what's your reaction? And I found it so funny and cute, and I started laughing, and the joy that he got from that, right? Like, I know these are seeming like really small things, but they were really like giving me glimpses of who this dog is and how my reaction and my behavior, what it means to a dog like this, right? Because one of the key things that we talk about in Bharcs is reassurance, and I've left that segment to just right after this. But yeah, it's really sweet when I see him, look like he's just having so much fun, which he was not doing, and it took 2 years for him to even be doing things like this, right? So it's it's a long video, and I'm going to move on to the next section. Oh no, that's not it. 1 moment, sorry. Still figuring this out. Okay. So, yeah. Sorry, not the greatest at this. Yeah. So some of the key things, of course, that we had to do with Bharcs is, of course, the learning canine communication. I think that's the most important. If I didn't know what Snow was trying to tell me, so how am I even going to start helping him? I'm reading the cues completely differently. I'm misinterpreting what he's saying. I'm not able to show up for him in the way that he wants to. I'm wanting to say, hey, maybe you can't do this, but I'm ending up scaring him further. And I think as someone who, again, this is something that Bharcs taught me, or at least revealed to me, is as someone who grew up in a household where I didn't know when I was going to get yelled at or what for, this constant thing of an unpredictable environment is extremely unnerving and unsettling, right? So as I'm seeing myself through this dog, and I'm able to now put sense to what I went through and say, okay, fine, actually, this is what I needed at that moment. And there I'm able to say, okay, actually, I'm able to now say, okay, I know what you need from me. I'm able to show up, right? But it took a long time, because I think for years I was not ready to accept that, hey, the way that I grew up was really could have been different, and I wish it was in certain moments that I had those moments of connection, or I wish that it wasn't unpredictable, or those kinds of things. But it's also put me in a good space to acknowledge and say, okay, it happened, but I can see that here's how it ideally would have been. And so for me to start doing that, I could only do that once I understood this. And I think with the Canine Essentials 101, the videos that come in, I think that really, because I wasn't bad at, I could read dogs, at least I thought to a certain extent, but to get into the nuance and the level that I'm now able to do, I think that was a big learning curve for me. And of course, the other things that I definitely that I had to look at was the aspect of reassurance here, and to acknowledge that the dog that is living with me is a dog who is in need of that sense of security from me, and I need to show up for him. And so when a dog is asking for connection, it is my sole responsibility as his primary caregiver to give that connection. In fact, today, like I remember just today when I was trying to get Snow to have his dinner, and Luna wanted to come in at the same time, and I was trying to tell her, hey, you wait for a second, I'll come back. But I was in such a hurry, and it felt dismissive to her. And I immediately said, oh my God, that feels so sad. And I immediately went back. But for me, these are moments of growth, because I was never that aware before. I never even acknowledged that. I was just like, hey, I'm telling you to wait, so then, you wait. And I don't like that, right? It shouldn't be like that. I like this where I'm like, oh, hang on a second. I want you to come here as well, but I do need to finish this. So just hang on a minute. I don't need to be dismissive, and there's a way. And so if I didn't know how to communicate, I wouldn't be able to do this well, right? And the other thing that really also does with is lead the way for the opportunity or the conversation around what really does it take to build trust, right? And for Snow, it simply meant showing up and reassuring him and not putting him in situations that trigger him. If it meant not ever going for a walk in his life, that's what it meant, right? And when we were chatting earlier, I remember saying this, but I had made peace, or I had not made peace, again, maybe that's not the right choice of words, but I had accepted that this was the way life was going to be, that I was always going to live with a dog who was reactive, that we would possibly never have people over, that my partner would always, and I would always have these moments where, oh my God, this is still happening. I can't do this. I can't do that. We would have those moments. I would never be able to take him out. These ladies know this very well, but I went 3 years never being able to leave the house, because I thought that, because he couldn't be without me, right? So I thought, I had resigned to the fact that this was the way that I was going to live for the rest of my life. But with that, I think came these really, really heavy feelings of, why did I adopt this dog? Did I make a mistake? Like, my whole life has changed. There was a lot of, I think, in those really dark moments, also moments of resentment. And I remember reaching out to Saujanya and that saying, okay, this is not good. It's okay. Like, I'm starting to resent having brought him home just because of how hard this is. And this was well into 2.5 years of bringing him home. And I remember Saujanya telling me, it's okay for you to have these feelings. You are feeling a certain way, but let's talk about what we can do to make sure that it doesn't extend, that he doesn't start feeling it. And because he is so in tune to me, like the smallest of changes affects him really badly, right? So it was definitely impacting him the way that I was feeling. So it was important for me to break down all of these things and get out of that hole and say, okay, whatever it is, I'm going to show up for this dog, and it doesn't matter what the outcome is. I was so fixated on what this before and after looks like. Forget about it. Let's just focus on building trust with this dog. Let's just have a good life. Like, let's enjoy our life, right? Even if that means, hey, if I can't take you for a walk, it's okay. Like, we have a house with a garden. Let's do some, like, we spend time outside there. So I had started to do this, and it was crazy to me what having that support in those moments meant to me, right? With all of the Bharcs family. But it also helped me put perspective of what that might mean to a dog like him, and what showing up and just telling him it's okay that you're scared. It's okay that this is uncertain to you. It's okay. I'm going to be there for you. You rely on me. And that took time to build, because for the first year, I was still putting him in situations that were triggering to him. So then how is he supposed to trust me? How is he supposed to, right? I'm not setting that right. So that's what really changed. And I do want to show you some of what the reassurance bit looks like. But for us, the key has been giving reassurance. The key has been showing up for my dogs time and time again. The key has been being perceptive to what their needs are, making sure their needs are met. And I know this sounds like a lot, but I felt like I was doing so much more before, and now it was really just making these finer adjustments to what this dog was doing, right? Like, for example, it's a very basic example, but before, when we used to feed, I used to mix all the food and I would give it to him. When he would not eat, the nutritionist had suggested he needs to eat. Maybe you should syringe feed him. When I've done that, he's thrown up. It's a very small example. Lesson learned. Immediately after that, give a big plate, offer food. Whatever you eat, you eat. Whatever you don't eat, you don't eat. It's showing up for him, letting him know that he has a choice. It's letting him know that I'm not going to force you. If you tell me no, I will listen to you. There were moments as we go through this journey that the walk didn't seem that far of a dream. And, even there it was put the harness and leave the door open, right? And he would just stand at the door and immediately run in. And I'm like, good, you're good with that. I'm willing to, you tell me, right? And that's the fundamentals of building that relationship was, I'm willing, I want to listen to you. I want to understand you. The smallest of communication, I'm there for you, right? I got your back. And I'll come to the walks bit, but reassurance has really saved our life. And I have a couple of videos that I do want to. So this is in our old house. This was about 2 years after adopting Snow. And so I'd say about a couple of months into having started Bharcs, the backped course, where I started with the hand signals and the reassurance at home. We had already done a lot of work in building trust. I had stopped putting him in triggering situations for months before this. I was being there for him. My mood had sort of shifted quite a bit. Like I was in a better state, but this was still in the previous stages. But I just want to give you some context. So before this, if my partner walked into the room, Snow would charge and either bite him at the back of the knee or at the ankle. And we did multiple things, and it's a long drawn out story of everything that we tried. But this is so it now ended up, and I might have to put this on loud. So if you have dogs around, please, you might want to consider reducing the volume there. But essentially, this is what was like much after. So we have done a lot of work, and this is what it sounded like. Right? He just turns, so there's nothing there to that, and then this was the same day, same moment, same everything. All I do was the hand signal. I know, you saw some of these, oops, what am I doing? Sorry. Yeah, you saw this in both Saujanya and Surabhi's presentation as well. So here it's the same moment. It's literally about 10 minutes later. The only difference is this time I tell my partner, before you come in, just let me know on the phone so I can, let him know that it's okay, that you're going to come in, but he's okay. And he does, he's not at danger. He's worried that, oh my God, he's feeling unsafe, right? And I need to let him know that, hey, I'm here for you. You don't have to feel unsafe. And I can do that all I want, and I can shout off the rooftops. But if I haven't done the work to build that relationship for him to trust me, this doesn't work, right? So there is a lot of work that's gone into this. Right? So it's a very simple video. And once we started doing this at home and started using this, it is crazy to me, right? Because the minute he's uncertain about something, he looks at me and I just have to say, hey, it's okay, Snow. And he's like, oh, okay, cool. And he's got it. He's like, I trust you. You're saying it's okay. It's okay. But I know how long it took to build that. And honestly, if you think about it, it's not that long. I know, like, in some human relationships, we spend a lot longer trying to build that trust because it is the foundation of any relationship. And I don't think that should be any different for dogs. But what we started to do was actually start to take that outside. So this is actually at a vet, at one of his vet visits. And this is how he is. Yeah, so obviously visibly scared. I don't know, it's okay. Very fine. Okay, fine. Right, and I just have one more like this, I think. Okay, no. So those were the bits and the reassurance. I'm going to pause for a bit. I just have one last thing about coming back to the walks and what that looks like today. But I just want to invite everyone back. Maybe we can chat for a few minutes on everything that we've discussed so far. Anyone has anything?
You've covered so many valuable points in your presentation that it's really, really hard to like just pick one of them. But what really, one of the things that stood out for me is how all of us like signed to Bharcs because we want to learn about dogs and know more about them. And then you start to learn so much more about yourself, which you then see how that also affects how you are with dogs. So it's really a journey. And the first moments of Snow being like mischievous and happy, like they are like tiny moments for someone that doesn't know what you went through. Yeah, a dog ripping a box, like shredding a box, right? But for you, when you see like the dogs starting to become who they are, you can start seeing the light at the end of the tunnel, like, okay, we got this, we are on the right path. So oh, your story and Snow's story, like it's just incredible, really.
Yeah, and I think it's also put things in perspective of resetting that. Otherwise, you constantly feel like you're working towards something. And I was like, that's so much pressure to put on a dog. Like, as if everyone is constantly, like, put the work onto yourself, right? Then you know how hard it is.
Yeah.
But the expectations that you have out of, I feel like that's where I had to reset a lot of expectations and say, hey, man, this is a journey that we're going on together. Like, forget about what, that's the fun part, right? Like, let's enjoy that. But yeah, that took a little bit of resetting of some hard moments of
Yeah, but because you started learning about yourself, you realized how hard it is to respond to triggers differently, right? It's not easy. So you start to understand your dog better, like what they are going through. And yeah, you start enjoying in the journey and not just focusing on a like final destination.
Yeah.
So many things that you said stood out. I don't know which one to like pick on, right? So I think one of the things that you said, and I think we should use this as a Bharcs slogan everywhere, credit to you, is you only go as deeper as you're ready to and able to, right, in the journey. Because I think it's so introspective, because you start learning about your relationship with others, you start understanding about emotions, emotional experience that Andy talks so much about. And only when you're ready to want to see certain things, want to really understand certain things, is when you can actually work on it. So I love that. I think I put in a petition to start using this as a slogan for Bharcs. Right? So I think
Got it. Take it.
that's great. So I loved that. But apart from that, you spoke something about trust and how, while you were doing so many things, like giving him choices, but like listening to him and not putting him in situations that were triggering, that can also actually affect trust, right? Like what you can be doing so many things, but if you continue to push your dog beyond what your dog is able to and want to do, that can affect trust. And I think we don't see that so often in conversations around trust. And I think also trusting your dog, right? The fact that your dog knows what they're trying to say, your dog knows that if they can't put themselves in a certain situation, believe that your dog, right? Believe the dog in front of you.
Yeah.
And I love that, how you didn't put pressure on yourself to take your dog out for a walk, and just enjoying the journey. I think these are some really great points that you made in terms of how what we talk at Bharcs, right? It's not about, there's no template way of,
Yes.
having a dog, working with a dog, being with a dog, or being their caregiver. You work with this one dog. And again,
Yeah.
the template changes with multiple dogs at home, right? Like you mentioned, you have
Yes.
multiple dogs at home, and it differs for each one of them, right? And you can't have a one size fits all for even a person in the same family, in the same household, right? So I think I love those conversations as well. And of course, I love the reassurance video. I think we all use that video as a reference whenever we want to talk to our
Awesome.
clients, because hand signal and everything. So I think that is great, but also how you spoke about preparing yourself in that situation, how you had already put so much work in the background before doing the hand signal, how you had a journey for a while before that video came out, the fact that you discovered health concerns, underlying health concerns for him, which of course affects behavior. And I think that's again the power of holistic approach, right? Because imagine if you weren't able to pick out on that thyroid dysfunction that he had, and what would have been the journey if you had not had that support externally. I think these are all so many like puzzle pieces coming together, right, for you. And at the end of it, again, it's not a destination you want to get to. And quickly, last point is, I think you spoke about how we have our own judgments on behaviors, right? Like you kind of didn't put it in the same words, but what you were trying to say is we have moments where we start judging certain behaviors, and we are like, this is the behavior I want my dog to have. I wish I'm doing so much, but why is my dog still behaving in this manner? Why can't? And there's a little bit of judgment attached to when we see a certain behavior. And it's very hard to remove that judgment because we are in the situation as well, right? And I think being able to recognize that we are judging the behavior, we're not seeing it from the dog's perspective, where they're coming from and what's the dog trying to tell me. I think that is a big part as well in the entire journey, because how you started removing the judgment as you went along the journey and how that helped you as well. So I think these are some great and I think these can be like longer conversations, each of them in itself, right? But I love them. Thank you for sharing all of that.
Thank you. And I was just, so today we had some people come over and they talked about, like we talked about pancreatitis, and she said, oh, I had pancreatitis, and she's a doctor, and she said, I have pancreatitis, it's so painful. It's actually, they compare the pain of pancreatitis to a bone fracture. And I was thinking, oh my God, and this poor dog, and in my head, now that my understanding of this whole thing has changed, it's like, poor guy, if I was him, I would probably have behaved much worse. Because it's so, imagine being in that much pain, not being able to say, the other person not listening, you're not getting the help you need, you're stuck in this situation. What else? Like, how frustrating, right? I felt so bad when she told me that. I was like, oh my God. But yeah, it is, yeah. Sorry. Thanks, Ash. Thank you for adding. Andy, I just had one last slide, but if you had anything, we can finish and then I can end with that.
Yeah, do your slide, because I've got a few things I want to share with you for sure. It's amazing. I'm really enjoying it. So yeah, let's have a look at this slide.
Okay, cool. So just to give some context, I think when to start, I talked about accepting the fact that he's never going to go for a walk, and we're never going to have what are these things that I thought we would do. And it's crazy to me how when you actually let it go and organically sort of just aim for a happy, healthy relationship with your dog, how a lot of these things actually just fall into place. Like it's, you're not even trying anymore, so it doesn't feel like pressure for either of you. But the first video, actually the first video I'll show you is really powerful to me, because he is walking on a busy street. Sure, it's about 9 p.m, so it's a bit dark. But if you see up ahead where he's looking is actually a dog who has attacked him in the past. So a dog a street dog. And this was months after that. And I was really nervous about even bringing Snow out, because the dog was on the road at the time. And my partner was like, that's okay, I'll wait here. Let's see what Snow's reaction is. So I do want to, that's one thing I do want to point out. I'm just going to share my screen now. Let me know if you can see my screen. Yes, perfect. Okay, so this is the video of us on a walk out in the evening, and you can see the dog up ahead. I'm just gonna. So, and this is him walking, so he sees the dog, he notices the dog. It's a black dog at the far end where my partner's standing. There, he sees him again. I use a sound to call him, and he's like, okay, yeah, I actually don't want to get into this stuff, right? So he's like, let's go. Yep. And for me, in that moment, I was trying so hard to be calm, because I was like, just control yourself, because this is a win for sure. But I don't want to overexcite him and then, get him to lose his head, because he's done such a great job of pausing, processing the moment, processing what I'm able to say, saying, yeah, you're right. I don't want to get into it. Let's just move away. Okay, I'll follow you. Let's go. So I don't want to like, like go crazy and say, oh my God, yeah. But I felt it, honestly. I was so excited from inside. But I was like, be calm. I was like, yeah, good job, Snow. Let's go. Come on, let's go this side, right? It's trying to be cool. But that was a big win for me. And this is a while ago. But I do want to show you on the left what our walks look like now, because this is special to me. I never thought I'd do it. But you also see how the Bharcs way has sort of influenced where I'm walking my dog, the equipments that I'm using, how slow we're walking, my non-interference. I have a habit of talking a lot to my dogs. So really just, learning to keep quiet, let them process the environment. So like, not even telling them, let's go here, there, right? You let go of all of these things, and you're like, hey, like, what do you want to do? Let's do it. Let's, this is your walk, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, whatever. Let's do it. And this is so beautiful to me, because I never thought that he'd be so calm. And, otherwise he's running. There was no walking, and he's constantly looking at everything around. There was very little sniffing. There was definitely no pausing and, watching. So for me, this is beautiful. It feels really special for a dog who was labeled reactive, aggressive, and, don't go near him and whatever. And he needs this kind of treatment and harsh methods. And I'm like, please don't tell me, right? Because look at this. And I know it's a long video, but I'm going to end with one last piece. And this is about 3 months ago, with my partner, who he has bitten really badly in the past. So first of all, dog bless my partner as well for just being so open and loving, irrespective, because I know that can be hard as well. But that's them now. This is some anxiety around it, but he's choosing to sit there, continue to sit there. Looks to me for reassurance. Okay, it's fine. All right. Papa, can you pet me some more? Yes. Like, I know you could also possibly look at this as a calming signal, and possibly it is, but it's also that weird with dogs. Sometimes it's this weird thing where I want that connection, but I acknowledge that it is, and therefore giving them that space and choice to say, hey, you can walk away, but yeah, but that's them now. And he does check in with me, and I do reassure him every opportunity I get. But yeah, that's all I had to share for today.
Oh, wow. What an amazing presentation.
Thank
and,
you.
it got to be quite emotional hearing you talking. And from our point of view, Kira and I, we had a dog that came to stay, supposed to come for 2 days, stayed the rest of their life, called Bertie. And I just keep thinking of my story with Bertie, hearing you share yours with Snow. And there's a couple of things I just wanted to kind of add, more from a human psychology understanding point of view, but I think it's relevant. First of all, emotional safety anyway, and the two components that we recognize about emotional safety. The first is feeling safe to even feel.
Yeah.
That's a deep thing, because we've all been in situations where we even feel that feeling isn't valid. And the second thing, I think, which is what this story is really about, is feeling safe to communicate how you feel. And there's an element of that we look at with emotional safety about understanding the quality of the presence of other. And that's what you offered, Snow, was a quality of presence that Snow was able to connect with, and a predictability of that presence. Because obviously, you know, dogs, especially the sensitive ones, they need that predictability. And we often talk about predictability of routines and predictability of environment. These things are important, but that gets diluted somewhat if we aren't predictable in that quality of presence and that reassurance and that connection. And also, even, you know, I think back to Bertie, who was a biter at first, and we didn't know much about him. He just came as a kind of an emergency foster, but we learnt pretty quick. And you do go through the thing because you know, I had a couple of nibbles from Bertie early on, and part of you feels, my God, what's going on? I'm trying to save you here. You know, how dare you? You can't not help but have that feeling. But then also it's a case of, okay, you're communicating something really clearly here. And I think for a lot of dogs, they need to test out stuff with that communication. If I do this, what's the response going to be?
Yeah.
But you say, yeah, powerful stuff. And I think also, you know, it's okay to get stuff wrong sometimes, because you know, I've got a client that I was working with a little while ago whose dog came very shut down, and actually she found that harder than when the dog started to get more clearer in the communication, even with the nipping, because it was like, I can kind of see context of this stuff, but I don't know what you need now. It's hard, isn't it? But we get it wrong with our loved ones all the time, you know. And I think, and it can be hard when we can see a loved one who's struggling, and knowing even for the other human, they can find it hard to communicate that emotional need too. And I think dogs can too.
Yeah.
So it's the quality of the presence thing that really just kind of struck me from your whole thing, and also the forgiveness from both Snow, because guess what, we get it wrong. So the dog gives us forgiveness all the time, but also for your husband. Is he a husband yet, or a partner? Is he a husband now? Yeah. The forgiveness there, and it's a beautiful thing. I think it was a beautiful thing. It was a lovely way to end, I think, to show the connection that comes. So thank you. Amazing comments, by the way. Really supportive comments.
That's great. Thank you so much. So I think that's all I had. If anyone had anything else, I'm just so grateful to everyone that showed up. And I think it's let this sort of be a reminder to not ignore your dog. I feel like that for me is the most heartbreaking thing. A dog that's asking obviously needs it. And in many situations, like you pointed out, are risking adverse responses even to get that connection. You know, they're like, hey, I'd rather get yelled at than be ignored, which is heartbreaking on so many levels. But I've been seeing this narrative of you have to not, you know, ignore your dog, and like more and more frequently. And I'm just like, that makes just no sense to me. I mean, imagine if someone did that to you. Imagine you walked into a room and someone ignored you. It's absurd. Like you would think, like, is there something wrong with you? Right? Because like, imagine I walk into a party and I'm just like, I'm not saying hi to anyone. Like, okay, that's a bit weird, man. I just want to say hi to you. Right? It's like, so I think there's this thing, like you pointed out, just showing up and be present for your dog and engaging in those relationships and finding the deeper meaning in those relationships, which I think is what Bharcs has taught me. It's really just, hey, it doesn't take a lot. It takes us spending quality time in the garden for some of us. That's what it takes, right? That is, so find what it is. It doesn't need to be these elaborate things. It's these small moments that really, and like you said, consistently showing up. I think that's what my partner's done for me. That's what Bharcs has done for me. So I'm able to understand what that feels like, even if I hadn't had it in the past, you know? So I think these things, it's definitely okay to make mistakes. I mean, we've all been there, but I think it would be good and beneficial to our dogs if we are able to at least find the learning moments in those. So we don't, you know, no dog feels dismissed or sad or lonely. That's heartbreaking to think. because we brought them home. I mean, we made that decision. They didn't choose to come in, right? So at least, hey, make their life worth it. Like, make it the best damn life they've ever had, right? Like, that's just the way I look at it now. But yeah, thanks everybody, and thanks to my ladies as usual for being here.
Amazing, amazing. And there's an extra component to this. You know, there's increasing evidence now about people who have secure attachment and their relationship to pain, actually. And I think that's really interesting when we think about, you know, you mentioned about identifying important parts of his physiological presentation. And actually visceral pain is something that we don't really fully know much about, even with humans, let alone dogs, and it often gets overlooked. But I think even if that was the case, luckily in this case you got that support, but I'd like to think that a dog who is uncomfortable but can feel the quality of our presence regarding feeling safe, that might have a similar thing to what we're learning now about humans, that actually when we feel that, actually our relationship to pain changes, which is really interesting. Amazing, amazing, amazing. So many wonderful things that people are saying in the chat. So thank you for that. Thank you for everybody's turned up. So Bharcs is transformative, and what Sindor has created with the educational platform is a gift, and we've got an extra gift for you, and I'm going to be sharing this in the group as well. There is a wonderful discount of 45% off the already very competitively priced 101 Essentials course. And the discount code is DogCC45. I'm going to put that in the group if I can do that. DogCC45. And if you just go over to the Bharcs website and look at the Canine Essentials 101 and put in that, you can get a 45% discount. And I think it's an amazing course. I haven't done it, but I've heard so much about it. I've also heard it's one that really challenges in a good way. I think everybody in the room can say that. And we've heard the transformative journeys that people have done. Next time then, just to let you know, by the way, we've got the new group, Emotional Wellbeing in Animals. If you haven't checked that out yet, have a look for that, which is looking at this kind of thing, but for animals all over. We had a couple of great posts in the week on snails to elephants. So it's a wide thing. We just think about emotional wellbeing for all animals. On 21st, we've got Jessica Hymas talking about bull breeds, and especially on the back of Sarabi's conversation. I think that's going to be really interesting. And then next Sunday, it's Eva. So Eva, do you want to give us a quick little flavor?
Yes.
We're going to
So
be covering next week.
yeah, so Anushree really beautifully started talking about walks. And so next Sunday, I will present a case study of how me and my dog Balt initially really struggled with walks, but then how our journey evolved and where are we now and what I learned. When I adopted him, this coincided with me signing up with Canine Essentials 101. So yeah, I hope people will find it interesting and useful. So yeah.
And I think it will be because, of course, you know, there's so much pressure on people when you think about walks, when you think about how dogs respond on walks, when you think about pulling on the lead, all these kind of things, and people are kind of often pulled into this notion that it's a training thing. You've got to keep training these things,
Yeah.
and it's really hard because guess what? In the village hall, the dog will walk lovely, but when they're out, because of their internal physiological state, a lot of the time it's extra hard for them. So I think this will be really resonate on a practical level. So that's amazing. So Eva's turn next, and then we're gonna have a little break because I'm going on holiday, and then Sarabi's back on the 6th of July and Sarjan on the 7th of July. So we've got coming back with a blast with another Bharcs weekend, looking at that as well. So do check out in the file section of the group. You've got the whole agenda of all the talks that are coming up. Thank you so much, Anushree. That was amazing, really amazing.
Thanks, Andy. Thanks for having me.
Powerful presentation today again. I think they've all been amazing, and they're building up nicely. And I don't know whether it was deliberate. I don't know, but as in the order of things, I'm sure it was. Who knows? But if it wasn't, everything's building nicely. I think it's just layering in beautifully. Great. Thank you, everybody in the group. Look after yourselves, and we'll see you very soon. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.